Week 3 of the Guillotine League. Pretty crazy so far. I did not expect to have a resurrection. So now we are going into Week 3 with all 18 teams still technically in contention. Mitchell in the Gulag and Cooper alive, but no longer has a second chance if he gets eliminated again or gets bottom 2 this week. So yeah, let's get into it. Alvin Kamara with a crazy big week last week. And first off, I just want to say, I'm going to try my best here, but I just recorded this, and now I'm recording it again because I didn't realize I had Spotify open. Didn't have my headphones on, so I didn't know any audio was coming out. But the screen recording of this PowerPoint or the slideshow picked up all the Spotify audio, and it was louder than my own voice. So we are re-recording after recording a 57-minute video. I'm going to try to make this one shorter, one because I've already said it, so I should be able to say it more concisely. But anyway, just so you know, if I seem short, that's why. I already spent an hour recording, and now I'm doing it again. Here we go. Cooper is back. He has been resurrected. Crazy. Didn't think it would happen. But in theory, maybe the easiest week to do it is the first week because there's so much randomness and volatility, but we will see. Cooper, as you know, I explained in the scenarios video, he can obviously keep surviving after this week, or if he gets eliminated this week, or if he's in one of the chopping spots at the bottom, then he is done. He just no longer gets another second chance. And Mitchell is in the Gulag. Tough week. Nothing went right for him, really, as we'll get to it on a slide. But the upside is he is not out. He has a chance to come back. And however, I would say it does seem like it's going to be harder for him to do it than Cooper. One, because, well, actually, I was going to say because 2 are on the block, but he only has to beat one person to resurrect himself. But there just seems to be less people to pick from on waivers, because Cooper is also like scrounging the waivers for these bottom of the barrel guys to find value. So it'll be tough, but it's not impossible. And I forgot to put these in last week. These are, if you've been here from last season, I had these slides, these top 25% and bottom 25% slides. But the top 25%, the elite of week 2, Huff getting a star, Johnny, JC, Matt getting the flames. Average score from these 4 of 118, which is actually down 5% from last week, 124. And I want to say the same thing happened last year, where the top came down, and usually also the bottom would come up, but I don't think the bottom came up, as we'll see. Because people start to learn who's good, so it balances out the teams more, because people will trade for people and whatnot. So that's why week 1 can typically actually be higher scoring than, or at least the top of the scores of week 1 will be higher than the top of the scores of week 2. That's happened 2 years in a row now. Bottom 25%, ice cold. We're giving Fleming the trash can, even though he came in 16th, because Cooper was 17th, which granted him the resurrection, and Mitchell was 18th, so he wouldn't get a trash can in theory. In theory, it would have gone to Cooper, but because he resurrected himself, I don't think he's worthy of a trash can, because that was a hard task to earn. I'm giving him an ice cube because I don't want to give someone undeserving of an ice cube, but Fleming is getting the trash can. And yeah, as we'll see here, the average score of these guys was 67, which is the exact same as it was last week of the bottom 4, excluding the person who got gulagged. So Mitchell is not included in this average. It's a crazy low average. I forget what the average was last year. I'd have to check. Maybe I'll do that for next week, as I'll look at how the beginning of this season compares. But it seems really low. All 4 of these guys, I think, scored in the 60s, if not barely above. So pretty wild. But Cooper, Joey, Ben getting an ice cube. All right, looking at Thursday night. And I talked to Ryan about this because, generally speaking, this presentation every week takes a while to put together. And trying to find things that don't provide much value that I can get rid of. And this is a candidate, talking about the Thursday night and the Monday night games. But the reason I like talking about them is because the Thursday night game does matter. And the Monday night matters more because it's like the last game that gets played before people get chopped. And you're banking on these last-minute performances. But The Thursday is interesting because if you have a really good player on Thursday, you might feel extra safe going into the weekend, and you might be willing to take on more risk and trade away guys for fab to guys who are desperate. But the reverse is if you have horrible players that are busts on Thursday, then you're panicking going into the weekend potentially and trying to trade to make your team better to save yourself, especially with 2 eliminations this week. I mean, 2 plus the Gulag team, so are going to be Gulag/eliminated. So anyway, that's why I like to keep these. These also don't take too much time, but if any of you guys have like a section of this PowerPoint, the whole presentation, that you just think is a waste of time, let me know. I mean, the things that take the longest are updating all your team slides, and those are kind of important, so I don't think I'm going to drop that. But anyway, for now, I'm going to keep these. These don't take much time to update. But going into it, we got Rodgers, Brees, Garrett Wilson, Lazard, and the Jets D tonight. Ramondre, Gibson, and Hunter Henry from the Patriots tonight. I have Ramondre and the Jets D, so I will be watching this game pretty intently. I'm hoping 2 of my 9 players are playing tonight, which is kind of a big deal. And I feel like I want to get like at least 20 points from that as like a floor, a bare minimum. I want 20 points from those 2 combined. But only other thing to say is, I guess, Mitchell is starting Gibson. So one of the Mitchell and the Gulag starting Gibson. Gibson had a good week last week. We'll see if he can repeat it. Good relatively. I mean, for a backup running back on a low offense. So, but moving into Monday night, a doubleheader. I wasn't sure. I remembered last season that it was either week 1 or week 2 that Monday night had a doubleheader, or maybe there were even 2 Monday night doubleheaders to start the season. And they weren't here this year, but here it is. This graphic is so blurry. I don't know how to get not blurry graphics sometimes. But starting off is the Bills, Jags at Bills, which starts at like 7:15, I think, Eastern. We got Trevor Lawrence, ETN, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas, Gabe Davis, I think is actually on a bench, and then Evan Ingram and Strange are kind of dependent on each other. Strange probably isn't startable if Evan Ingram is playing. Ingram is on David's team. He's hoping for a start there. And Cooper actually has Strange. So Cooper, being the resurrected team that still has a pretty weak team, I'm sure he's banking on another nice performance from Strange. And then for the Bills, Allen, James Cook, Kincaid, Shakir, Keon Coleman, and the Bills D. Lots of guys all pretty startable. Although we've seen some disappointing performances from Kincaid. Allen even had a bad performance last week. And Keon Coleman is 0, so we'll see how that goes. He should do better. He was on the field a lot, so... yeah. And now the second game that starts, I think, at about 8 p.m. Commanders at Bengals. Hoping the Bengals can get their first win of the season here. But from the Commanders, Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson. Why am I blank? Okay, yes, Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, McLaurin, and Ertz. And the funny thing here is, when I was looking at this game and who has people in this game, to start the season, I think every Commanders receiver possible outside of McLaurin was rostered because everyone was trying to find that guy that's the wide receiver too. Like, could have been Luke McCaffrey, could be Diami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, Noah Brown got signed, and then now none of them are rostered. So even McLaurin is kind of a bum this year, so no one's really touching the Commanders receivers anymore. But Ertz had a good week last week, so maybe he can repeat that. Phil has him. And yeah, from the Bengals, Burrow, Jamar T is returning. It seems in all likelihood he should be playing this Monday. And then Zach Moss, Gesicki, and the Bengals defense. And I'm guessing no one's going to start Yosavash if T is playing, and that kind of makes sense. But I feel like this could be a Moss game, a Zach Moss kind of game here, because we might actually have a lead and be playing with a lead and just pound it to him. So we'll see. Or it's going to be a big Burrow game. Maybe it's a shootout, because who knows? You never know, really. So, yep, that is the Monday night slate. It'll be fun having a doubleheader. Brings a lot of volatility going into Monday night. And the one thing I do know is that JC has 4 players on Monday night. And I already said it once because I recorded this already. I'm trying to remember who it was. It's Burrow, Gesicki. Okay, I failed. I might have to look at it. It is... Hold up. Didn't have the league up. Here we go. Burrow, Gesicki, Christian Kirk from the Jags, and Keon Coleman on the Bills. So that is quite a number of people, almost half his team into Monday night, so he is almost definitely going to be not safe going into Monday night. I mean, he probably will be, generally speaking, but technically he will definitely be down going into Monday night unless his other 5 guys really pop off for him. So will be interesting to watch because I'd say he's one of the more decent teams in the league. All right, the Week 2 standings. Cooper survives the chop, and now Mitchell is on the chopping block in the gulag. Cooper is resurrected. You can see them 2 down here. Potter and Jack still the top of the league. They were the top last week, and they stayed there this week. Huff and Johnny and JC climbed the boards a bit, and I'm there at 6. Those are the 6 people above 200, averaging over 100 a week. And then there's a pretty big drop-off to like the next tier, so to speak. Mark, David, James, Matt, Philip, Jake, Ryan, Fleming, Ben, Joey. And there's a pretty big gap after Joey to Cooper and Mitchell at only 120, averaging 60 a week. Like, that is low. But the funny thing is they're not out of it, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah. All right, the economy. Mark has been active, and so has Ryan. Ryan was low on fab last week, actually, like way down here at like 30 or 40. I forget exactly what it was, but he was in the bottom 3, and now here he is because he traded away Bijan and a bunch of other running backs. Now he's at 110, so he's in a good spot. And Potter's up here. He was up here last week. He pretty much stayed true to where he was. And I'm up here as well. Johnny, Jack, also over 100. Huff has not made a single move that has spent any money yet. And his team's looking pretty good as he was the top scorer last week. And then, yeah, average fab in the league right now is 81. So dipping down pretty quick. 1373 left in circulation. So that is what, 430-ish down from the start. 100 of that being Mitchell, and 50 of that, because Cooper's got 50 back, being Cooper. So a lot of spending, really. So yeah, that's really all there is to say. I mean, Fleming and Phillip, as we'll get into it, they're low on fab this week, or after this week. They're now really low on fab because they spent a bunch, but their teams are a lot better for it. So I think it might actually have been a good move for them to do that. And Cooper at 37, he didn't spend that much, as we'll get into. He is still hanging around with plenty of fab to work with, and he is in no way safe this week, but he might believe in his guys and hopes that that 37 fab will be useful next week when he's still alive, potentially. So anyway, adding this one back in now that we're a couple weeks in. For those of you that were here last year, you've seen this before, except probably a lot smaller because I crammed like multiple weeks into this. This just shows everyone's fab week over week and where you are relative to the market share line. If I remember last year, a lot of teams were getting eliminated that were above the average market share line, which is good for the rest of the league. When a high fab team gets eliminated, it's good for the rest of the league. It's also good when a team with good players gets eliminated, but if you ask me, I'd actually rather a team with a lot of fab get eliminated than a team with good players, because both are good in their own way, but I'd rather the fab be out of the market, especially if I'm one of those teams that's high up on fab. If I'm a team that's low on fab, also I'd want that, because if I'm a team with low fab, like this week, Philip Fleming, if one of the really strong teams gets eliminated and there's all these good players on waivers, it doesn't help me because I can't get them. So anyway, that's all I have to say. We'll keep this one going week over week. We can see Mark way up here, Philip Fleming all the way down here. All right, my little headline for week 2 is: how much fab are you willing to spend on short-term security, especially in this double elimination week? Because that's kind of the theory is, how do you spend your fab? People have different theories and strategies. We've seen, Jack's not shy to mention his strategy is, who cares about fab? Let me spend it. But he says that, but he's over 100 fab right now. But with 3 teams technically on the block this week, if you include Mitchell in the gulag, there's an even higher likelihood we could see an unexpected team fall this week. So who is willing to risk it, and who is going to overspend to survive? The way I think of it is, there's players that give you security in the short term, but it's unlikely that they're going to be viable starters in, say halfway through the season or near the championship if you make it that far. So a good strategy is obviously to lock in those studs, so to speak, that you can imagine starting if you made it to the championship, because those are the guys you need to build your lineup on. So making a bunch of these like small moves, spending 5, spending 8, spending 10 on these guys that, sure, they're a great flex play or whatever, but how valuable is that short-term success to you versus spending big on guys that you will start for the entire season? So that's just the thinking. So and I'll bring it back up as we go through some of the trades this week because it does tie into those. But yeah, that is that. Now into our graphs, the Fantasy Pros versus Sleeper. Now that we have Mitchell and Cooper on here, it's really skewing everything to the left. So we have a lot of people in the green this week, but a lot of the similar names up here. But the new ones that are kind of in the mix are Fleming, Huff, and Phillip. Even he's barely teetering on this line, but he's pretty much in the green. I guess Sleeper doesn't really like him, but yeah, that's interesting. The points to point out here really are the discrepancy between Fantasy Pros and Sleeper for James and Phillip. Fantasy Pros has Phillip as the third highest ranked team this week, which is, I mean, he has, Tyreek Hill and Bijan and Nico Collins and Lamar. Like, it makes sense. He's got some good guys, but compared to Sleeper has him bottom half of the league, bottom 6, including Mitchell and Cooper. So that's kind of funny. And then James is the alternative. Sleeper likes him a lot more. Fantasy Pros has him as a bottom half of the league team. So that's really it. Otherwise, everyone's pretty much on this line of left to right, bottom left, upper right. And now the next week versus rest of season, we've got pretty much the same guys in the green again. But like I said, Phillip, look at Phillip and Fleming. These are not guys that were up here last year. It was just Jack and like Potter and me and some other guys, plenty of other guys. But now Phillip and Fleming joined the mix on looking really good now and good for the rest of season. Obviously, I've said these guys spent significantly more than everyone else, but their teams look good right now, which is good for them. The people outside of Cooper and Mitchell that are in trouble, according to this, are Ryan, David, and then I guess you could kind of lump Matt, Jake, and Joey into that group of somewhat risky teams right now. Jake and Joey are higher on the rest of season ranking, but they have Jake as the lowest outside of Cooper and Mitchell for the week 4 rating, according to Fantasy Pros. So, yeah, that is all to say there, I think. And now my favorite, the position strength and budget. As mentioned, we'll see Phillip and Fleming here. Their teams are stronger now. They're in the upper half of the league on that. Fleming is supposedly the strongest team in the league. Rest of season. This position strength is rest of season related, by the way. So like people that have injuries, you can kind of ignore that. That's why like David is still upper half because it includes like Pacheco and Tua and those guys that will be playing later in the season. But me and Jack seem to be in good spots. We're tied for second in position strength, and we're both over 100 fab, well above the midway mark, the average mark of fab. So we're in good spots. Plenty of guys in the green here, good spots. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's skewed a bit by these teams down here, why more teams are making it into the green. But anyway, and then Ryan is the one who I think is in a tough spot. He is considered the weakest team outside of the Cooper Mitchell, but he does have fab to spend. Matt is slightly better than him, but has less fab. It's not great to be in that spot either. And same with Jake. He's below the average on both budget and position strength. So risky spot to be. And then Ben's kind of floating in somewhat of a no man's land out here. I guess in theory, the line should go like this, and if you're up here, you're good. He's pretty much right on the line of you've spent and you've made your team a little better, but you're lower on fab. So he's not far off the mark there. All right, so in summary here, I pretty much just put everyone who was in the green on all three up in the upper right. But like I said, a lot of people were in the greens because of the skewed from Mitchell and Cooper. But I still think these are all pretty good teams. I think in previous years, it's unlikely you get eliminated early on, like in these first 6-8 weeks. If you're in the green on all three of those charts, you're probably good. I think there are a couple instances where you could get eliminated, but it's usually if you have a fluke injury or a fluke bad performance, multiple fluke bad performances. But yeah, where I'm putting everyone else, so over in this good and short-term, questionable long-term, we got Fleming moving into here, Fleming and Phillip, I should kind of lump them together because they did the same thing. They both spent a lot, made their team better. Now they don't have a lot of fab, but they're really good in the short term, if not some of the strongest teams currently. And then Ben, I think, also falls into this category because his team is above average now. So he has bought himself some short-term security, and he's not as low on fab as Phillip and Fleming, but he's lower than average, so his long-term viability could be questioned. And then the flip side, Ryan flipped himself week over week. Ryan was up here. Now he's down here because he is one of the weakest teams now, but he has a lot of fab. And he has guys that are serviceable enough, but he is definitely not in the safest position this week, but for long term he might be okay if he survives. He's got the fab. And then David and Joey are similar to each other in that they both have injuries that are hurting them. David has Tua, Evan Ingram, Pacheco. Ingram should be back soon, if not this week, then next probably, and then Tua is probably going to miss a couple weeks with a concussion, and Pacheco broke his fibula, so that's got to be 6+ weeks. I don't know. I think that's what they said. And then Joey's got CMC on IR, and Mixon is battling an injury, but last I checked, he is trending in the right direction, should play. So that's good news for Joey, but still I think he's in a tough spot without McCaffrey in the meantime. But long-term should be good. He's still good on fab. Both these guys are pretty okay on fab as well. I have James, JC, and Matt in this mid-undetermined category because I don't think they necessarily classify with any of these yet. They're kind of floating around in some yellows, in some greens, in some reds as well. We saw Matt in the red a couple, or just for one at least, I think. So they're kind of in that floating middle section. And then in the danger zone, I have Mitchell and Cooper, obviously, because their teams are not good, frankly, but nothing they can do about it. And I have Jake here as well. You could argue put Jake in here because he has A.J. Brown injured, and that hurts him. But with A.J. Brown back, he's looking a little better. But ultimately, I think he's in a tough spot this week, so I have him in the danger zone. I didn't want to only just have the Gulag resurrected people in the danger zone. Someone else had to go with them. So, Jake, you got it. Only you and Ryan were at 0.5, so it was going to have to be one of you, and Ryan has a lot of fab, so that's the difference. Okay. Into the weekly, or the team-by-team review. Huff with a surprise dominant performance. I think Kyler had a great week. I liked Kyler in drafts. I didn't get him in any of my leagues, but people kind of snagged him earlier than I would be willing to go for him because there was still risk involved, but I liked the upside that was there because the last time he was healthy, we're not too far off when he was the QB1 in an entire season. So he has a lot of rushing upside. He throws it, rolls out, throws it a lot. And now that we saw Marvin Harrison Jr. do it, have a good performance, I think that could be a good connection though in the entire season. And McBride's good too. So Kyler should be good for a lot of the season. And with pretty weak quarterback play overall this season, not many quarterbacks are scoring over 20 points in any given week. I think this week it was only Kyler and Jalen Hurts and... You know what? Let me check real quick because I want to kind of prove that point. Stats week 2 QB. Kyler Murray 29, Jalen Hurts 25, Derek Carr, he's been great, 23, Darnold 21, and that's it. Everyone else was sub 20. Baker Mayfield was basically at 20, 19.8, but everyone else was below. That's why, funny enough, Daniel Jones, who Cooper had, was number 6 at 18. What a great play by Cooper to start Daniel Jones. If he started a different quarterback, almost any other different quarterback that was on waivers, I think he would have gotten eliminated. And I'm just realizing that now. So that's kind of hilarious. So awesome job, Cooper, even though we're not on your slide. Okay, back to Huff. He has done almost nothing. He stayed really quiet. He just got Jalen Wright for 0 fab to, I guess, be the handcuff to Achane. And on that point, I think Achane and Connor are a great duo of running backs. And he has Charbonnet. Charbonnet will be great if Kenneth Walker's out another week. And then Shakir's another good flex. Goddard's average. And then receivers are where he's maybe a little weaker. Drake London finally scored last week, had a decent week. And then Deontay Johnson has been just a big disappointment this year so far. But it sounds like I would assume that he would see improvements with Dalton at quarterback. That is my presumption. Every Panthers receiver should see improvements now. Adam Thielen, Leggett. I think that's it. Those guys should improve. The Panthers do play the Raiders this week, and they just had a good defensive week against the Ravens, so we'll see. But I still think the Panthers will improve this week with Dalton. I have Dalton. I'm going to start him. So there's that. Johnny. What I'm looking at here is he spent 20 fab this week on 2 bench players. And that's not a super fair evaluation because Jaden Reed is kind of a long-term investment where when Jordan Love comes back, Jaden Reed should go back to being a great, probably by the time he comes back, maybe a good flex play. Or Malik Willis develops, but it seems like they're just going to run the ball 80% of the time with Malik Willis at the helm, so Josh Jacobs should benefit from that. But they use Jaden Reed on like end arounds and carries and other stuff, so they get him involved. But right now he's kind of a risky start, so I don't think Johnny's starting him. And then Gus Edwards for 5. It's not a terrible move. I don't see him as a long-term piece anywhere. It's the J.K. Dobbins show, even though they kind of split carries. I think soon enough, I think Dobbins will probably get the bulk. But Johnny had a good week last week. James Cook, Malik Neighbors, Ridley, these rookies are really panning out for him. Brock Bowers has been a great tight end. I think he's leading all tight ends in receiving yards so far. Jaden Daniels has been a serviceable enough quarterback, and Brian Thomas has also been pretty serviceable. So good stuff from Johnny here so far. Strong receivers. JC also getting a flame this week. Alvin Kamara heavily carried the way. I want to say, I forget exactly what it was, but outside of these 3 that we show here, Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams, Burrow, I think his team was pretty unexciting, pretty unimpressive, I should say. But I think he still has a really solid core. I mean, Alvin Kamara and Gibbs, solid. Devontae Adams, great floor, I think, from him. And Burrow should continue to improve after that abysmal week 1. He gets Gesicki for $2. I forgot to put the $2 here. He's down to 97 fab. I think he's starting him this week too, and he had a good week last week, but there's no guarantee that continues. That very well could have been his most productive fantasy week on the season, barring a week where he gets a touchdown. But yeah, I think there's just some other weak points on JC's team outside of where I think he's good. I think Christian Kirk has been bad and is risky. Brandon Cooks is hit or miss. And then Keon Coleman, he's had 0 points last week, even though he had a very high snap count. He got no targets, or at least no catches. So there are some weak spots here, but I think overall he's got a pretty solid core and continue to build off it with 97 fab. All right, Matt's team. Marvin Harrison Jr. finally popped off after a terrible week 1. So that is a great look for Matt. DK also had a good week, which we didn't see week 1. So ultimately, Matt's team, he didn't do much this week. He got the Packers D for $1. His receivers are good. I like DeMarcus Robinson at the flex. He should be acting as roughly their wide receiver 1. He's getting like 90% of the snaps, even weeks 1 and 2, when Puka and Cooper Kupp were on the field for portions of those weeks. And then McConkey as a second flex has been good. So he's really strong at receiver, and he's pretty mid everywhere else. Dak is pretty average. Aaron Jones and Najee Harris is a pretty average, maybe potentially below average duo of running backs, and Taysom Hill is Taysom Hill. Hasn't done anything that crazy this year. But Matt seems to be in a better spot than he was last week, given that Marvin Harrison Jr. popped off. And getting DeMarcus Robinson, I like that move. But yeah, that is Matt's team. And now and Matt got a flame, so shout out for going from Ice Cube to flame week over week. I did not get a flame this weekend. This is from last week, but I almost got a flame twice in a row. I missed it by 1 spot. Everyone who got a flame last week or star was not in the top 25% this week. So that's, kind of expected. It's pretty random these first couple weeks, but I feel pretty proud that I was close to it going back to back. I think I'm pretty happy with my team. I wasn't the most happy with it after the draft, but as the season 2 weeks have happened, I'm pretty happy with how my guys have worked. Like Josh Jacobs and Ramondre Stevenson is like the most, in my opinion, after the draft was like a pretty unpretty duo of running backs, but they're both working out great for me. One because of the Jordan Love injury that Josh Jacobs is going to get force-fed the ball, and Ramondre Stevenson is kind of back to 2 years ago form, it seems, and they're using him a lot. So, and I got Godwin is the wide receiver 1 on the season, and I got him in like the 7th round. So it's early, but that's a great thing to have, and why I've been successful early on. Justin Jefferson had a good week, like a 97-yard touchdown, kind of carried his number. But I like my core of guys. The funny thing is I'm like, it's funny to see these guys as green, Pittman and Cortland Sutton. because they've been such bums this year, if you ask me. Pittman has heavily fallen short of my expectations, probably everyone's expectations. But according to the analytics, they have him as a top tier flex 1. I mean, it's fair because he's a wide receiver 1, and same with Cortland Sutton. He is a wide receiver 1. He's just been disappointing. And I don't really care that my quarterback and it's actually Dalton, not Stafford, but apparently Dalton is worse than Stafford according to the analytics, or else it would have put Dalton here. And Parkinson, I don't really care that I'm kind of below average on those positions because both of those positions have been heavily underwhelming across the league. So I don't really feel like I'm at a heavy disadvantage to everyone else if I don't have great ones. I think where you set yourself apart is with running backs and wide receivers and honestly defense sometimes. So that's where I'm at. And to hit on some trades, one of them that happened last week was Hawkinson and 5 fab for Jordan Mason. I'm pretty upset about that I did that trade right before Mason, before CMC was put on IR and Mason was named the starter for like the next 4 weeks. So that's a tough scene. I would have loved to have Mason like in my flex 2 instead of Cortland Sutton. I'd be even stronger now. But it is what it is. It happened. Now I have Hawkinson, who hopefully will be good for me later in the season. And I also traded away Chase Brown for 5 fab, so I'm okay with that. And I picked up Josh Palmer and Andy Dalton, and Andy Dalton is starting for me this week, so look out for that. All right, James's team. J.K. Dobbins is a stud. I don't see any reason that he will not continue to produce at a high level this entire season. JSN had a big week. He was targeted like a fiend last week, like 16 to 18 targets. I forget what it was, but it was a really high number in the teens. And Hunter Henry had a crazy week of like 100 yards on 10 catches, so something like that at least. So, strong outing. Wait, this isn't Hunter Henry. This is Derrick Henry. My bad. Hunter Henry did have a good outing, but that's a different team. Derrick Henry. James got Patrick Mahomes last week. Didn't really do much this week. Got Demario Douglas. I think his team is solid enough to not do anything with it and be okay. This is Jahan Dotson right here, but I think he's actually starting. Pull it up. T. Higgins, which I'm surprised they don't have T. Higgins in here because they must think he's not going to play. But if what I'm hearing is right, it seems like he's leaning. He's set to return. He returned to practice today, Thursday, so he should play. I mean, I saw him warming up before the Chiefs game. He was already ruled out pretty much, but like he was pretty much at full capacity warming up. Didn't look like he was limited at all. So if that's where he was last week, he should be good to go this week. That puts James in a great spot with T returning. Olave's okay. I mean, the Saints have been amazing, but Olave hasn't been. But James is pretty much really good everywhere else. I think he's outside of like the somewhat weaker flex plays. I mean, one of these is T. That's in no way a weak flex play, but he's pretty much really solid at every position. Mahomes, the running back core is solid. The receiver core is decently solid, and then tight end is good. So James is in a good spot with 80 fab as well. All right, Jake's team coming in right around the middle of the pack this week. Jalen Hurts leading the way, and Zay Flowers, Bills D. Jake with some interesting moves this week. We just saw the trade this morning with Ryan where Jake gets Kyron and Elijah Moore, but he gave away Montgomery, Zay Flowers, and 3 fab when he just got Montgomery in waivers this week for 30 fab. So the trade on the surface, to me, I would rather take Ryan's side. I think Montgomery and Kyron are more comparable than people think. People have Kyron way above Montgomery, probably just because Montgomery's in a committee in theory, but he gets the touchdowns, he gets the carries, he gets the yards, he gets used. So I don't really care if he's in a committee, if he's going to get used like that, as we've seen. But if you look at it in perspective of if you replace Montgomery here with 30 fab, you can essentially say he spent 33 fab and Zay Flowers for Kyron and Elijah Moore. If you put it that way, it's not terrible because Kyron probably goes for 40 to 50 fab. Maybe. So, in that perspective, it's not terrible. But looking at his team now going into the week, I do not like that he has 2 Browns receivers, Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. And I don't know if Jerry Jeudy is actually who he has in his wide receiver 1 slot, but according to the analytics, that is his best receiver. So that's not a good thing if he is your best receiver. Losing Zay Jones didn't help. So 2 Browns receivers on a struggling Browns offense where Deshaun is not doing well either. Jake Ferguson should be back, so that'll be a good piece to have back. And then it looks like he has 2 Broncos running backs, both Javonte and Jaleel McLaughlin both starting. So he's doubling up on two different rooms here, the Browns wide receiver room and the Broncos running backs room. So that's not the prettiest, but maybe it could work out for him. And then DeAndre Swift, I believe this is, who I'm not super duper high on, has been pretty unimpressive so far this season, but doesn't mean he can't turn it around. But that's where Jake's team's at, and he's at 67 fab, which is on the lower side of the league. So while I think I like Ryan's side of the trade more, Kyron will definitely improve his floor while A.J. Brown is out. So there's something to be said about that, I'm sure. All right, Ryan, the other half of the trade here. So Ryan was busy being a trading machine this week. If you lump it all together to look at everything he got versus everything he gave away to then try to gauge, what we think about what he did, he gets Montgomery, Zay Flowers, and Adam Thielen, all guys that he has in his starting lineup, and he also gets 99 fab. Trades away Bijan, Kyron, Zamir White, Zach Moss, Elijah Moore, and the Vegas defense. So essentially Bijan, Kyron, Moss, probably the most startable guys out of those. Zamir has not been able to prove it yet this year, so I think Ryan sold on him. I'm surprised he got as much fab as he did for him, for how bad he's been. But Ryan trades away 4 startable running backs and only gets 1 in return. So that's where I think his team is obviously weaker now, but he has the fab to keep building on it. But this week he's definitely in a tougher spot. But he is confident in Thielen at the flex, and I do like the Juwan Johnson play at flex, but I'm not super high on Garrett Wilson after what I've seen through 2 weeks. And then I believe his RB2 here is Deontay Foreman, who saw more work last week in the Browns backfield, so maybe that'll continue. Don't really love Freiermuth either, to be honest, but he's okay, I guess. So, yeah, he's got an okay, below average team here. But he has the fab to work with it. So we'll see how he does. Okay, Phillips' team. Once again, right around the middle of the pack. I think he's surprised me at least. His receivers are really carried the way. We saw him kind of panic after most of his team had played through Sunday, and they were, he was definitely down there and ready to get eliminated with Mitchell. So he trades 75 for Bijan. Didn't end up needing to do it because Sunday night Nico Collins goes off and puts him into safety after that game. So he didn't need to do it, but I still think it honestly could have been a good move because 75 fab is a lot. But now Phillip has a stud at running back and studs at receiver, multiple. And I think Carson Steele is also serviceable, and he has a bunch of other serviceable guys like Zach Ertz. So Tyreek and Nico should be great going forward. And right now I think Phil's in a good spot. With 15 fab, it's tough, but I think you can work your way around that, whether living with who you got, making budget moves, or trading players away to get fab. I think Phil's in a much better spot than he was last week, I would say, even though he has low fab. So there we go. Now Potter's team. Kind of an unimpressive week. Potter, after the draft and through week 1, had like a lot of really good studs at receiver. Traded a lot of them away to get fab. Traded away Jaden Reed. Traded away Brandon Ayuk, and I think one other. But he gets DJ Moore back, who the Bears in general have been kind of a mess. So I don't know how much I love that. But getting 21 for Jaden Reed last week from Mitchell was a good move, considering I think Jaden Reed went for 15 fab on waivers this week, and waivers people tend to get overspent on. So and 15 I think was an overspend. I think the next highest bid was in the single digits maybe. Could have that wrong, but regardless, he also goes and gets Likely and Leggett. Like I said, Leggett should be good. I think could have some improvement with Andy Dalton at quarterback, and I'm pretty sure he actually has Leggett in his lineup over Isaiah Likely here at the flex 2. But he's still pretty mid at running back, and Trevor Lawrence has been a disappointment. But his wide receivers through his flexes should be good enough to keep him going for now, and he has a lot of fab, so that's where Potter's at. All right, Jack's team. Brief leading the way, Jordan Mason. I mean, those guys, while Mason is still the starter, are going to be a great duo of running backs. And to go over his trades this week, as we know, he got Barkley back. Or no, he traded Barkley back to Ben and got 63 fab. And then he did a trade with me to get Mason. He gave me Hawkinson and 5 fab. And then he also traded away Pierce to get 3 fab. So net, he gets 61 fab and Mason, trades away Barkley, Hawkinson, and Alec Pierce. So he's back to being over 100 fab. He and Ryan were both low on fab last week, and now they're both over 100. And I think Jack did it in a better way because I think Jack's team is still good, whereas Ryan's team is kind of bad right now. His receivers are still a little on the weaker side. Brandon Ayuk and Stephon Diggs are guys that have underperformed so far this year. Sam Laporta is still heavily underperformed this year. So even though analytics likes him, I think it's still a risky. It's not risky to start him. You have to start him, but I'm not excited about it. I'd be scared to have him. And then we saw Jerome Ford kind of take a dip in usage last week to Deontay Foreman, and Romeo Doubs has Malik Willis throwing to him, so that's not great. Cleveland as the number 1 defense this week. Who are they playing? I looked it up earlier and I still forgot now. The Giants. Okay, so yeah, that should be good for Cleveland. They should be able to lock him down. And Anthony Richardson provides the rushing upside, so he's in a good spot. I'd be worried about Laporta, but he's got a lot of fab, and his team seems to be good enough to survive right now. All right, David's team. Riddled with injuries, plagued with injuries. Tua with a concussion for probably a couple weeks. Some people out there think he might retire. I don't know about that, but Pacheco, broken fibula, should be out like 6 or so weeks, is what I heard. Potentially longer. Evan Ingram could play this week, if not, just maybe one more week. But that's tough. It's a tough scene. And we're seeing a lot of red here in the lineup. So he's not in a great spot this week. He gets Goff, and he still has Jonathan Taylor holding it down for him. Should be good. Rico Dowdle is now in as RB2. Tank Dell had negative receiving yards last week, so that shouldn't happen again, but that's concerning. Jalen Waddle. I mean, Tua's out now, so that should, in theory... I mean, I don't know. Tua's kind of bunned, so maybe Jalen Waddle's better off for it that Tua's out, so we'll see. And I believe his tight end, this is Shoemaker. I think that's Shoemaker's picture, but it will be Ingram if he plays, and I think he has the replacement as Foster Moreau, so that's who we'll see for tight end for him. And then Jacoby Myers and Christian Watson, except I don't think he's starting Christian Watson. It's a risky play with Malik Willis, so it looks like he has Wandale. I think Wandale's a great play, a much better play, even against the Browns. I think provides a better floor. He's clearly getting used. Week 1, he had a bunch of targets. Week 2, he didn't have a bunch of targets, but he caught a touchdown, so it seems like he'll get something one way or another used in that Giants offense. So he's in a little bit of a tough spot this week, but he has some upside, still has a little bit of fab. We'll see how it goes. All right, Mark's team. I think his team is on the up. Baker's been great. Jamar should be coming back into form. Devonta Smith is great. Kittle's been great. Amari Cooper here. I'm looking at his green bars here. I mean, this is kind of similar to me with the Pittman thing. It's like I have Pittman as my flex 1. He has Amari Cooper at his flex 1. Both those guys are wide receiver 1s on teams that and were expected to be better, but so far they haven't been. But the analytics still likes them because they're a wide receiver 1. So still good to have him, but he has been scoring like 3 points a week. So we'll see if that continues. And then I believe this is Darnell Mooney, who's been pretty good. And he goes and picks up P. Ryan as well. Actually, it might have been earlier. It's not on this week, so I think he got P. Ryan last week, which ended up being a smart move. I low-key think P. Ryan could be used just as much, if not more, than Carson Steele. So we'll see how that plays out. But P. Ryan is he's a better pass protector. He's a veteran. He has had success before. I'm biased because he was on the Bengals, and I still think he's the best backup running back we've ever had in the past decade. He was great. He can catch the ball too, receiving back. So he's kind of all around really solid. And ETN's good. Baker's been good, even though the analytics doesn't love him, I think, because of the matchup against Denver. But that's pretty much it. He gets Chase Brown for me for $5. And then he gets $20 for Singletary and trades away Michael Wilson to Cooper for a couple bucks. Ultimately, he gets Chase Brown at 18 fab, trades away Singletary, Michael Wilson. The Singletary trade is one I wanted to tie back to my earlier discussion about usage of fab and investing in players that you will see yourself starting long term. Devin Singletary, while he is a RB1 on the Giants, he's an RB1 in the league. He's on the Giants, which is one thing. And two, he's just not elite. He will be a great guy to have as a floor play in your flex, but I think no way we're seeing someone starting Devin Singletary in like the final 4 to 6 weeks. I don't think. Could be wrong, but that's my take. So from a perspective of long-term usage, $20 is a lot for Devin Singletary. But if you use his logic, Ben's logic of he spent 10 on Thielen or got 10 for Thielen, you can look at it as he traded away Thielen and 10 fab for Devin Singletary, which I don't know if that makes it sound better or worse, but probably about the same if you ask me. But yeah, we could be worried about Chase, but from my opinion as a Bengals fan, I'm not worried about him. I think he'll be bounce. I think this might be the bounce back week, so we'll see. All right. Oh, and you got Kareem Hunt, who we could see if the Chiefs end up using them, but it sounds like right now it's the Carson Steele and Samaje Perine show. Okay, Ben's team. Starting off with Rashid Shaheed, it seems like he is going to be good for a 50-plus yard touchdown every single week. He's really taken away from Chris Olave, I might say. But Shaheed has 2 long touchdowns, one each week to start the season. So, seems like he's going to be good for one every week, it seems. But other than that, Ben is pretty strong at running back now that he's gotten Barkley back, even though he lost money on that. He is probably better off for it having Barkley. Rashad White is dealing with a groin injury, but should be fine, I think, this week. Maybe could be limited. But Devin Singletary now in the flex. And they're not showing Kenneth Walker here, but if Kenneth Walker is healthy, he will play. But I think the last report I saw is that he is trending in the wrong direction. But I think Ben can be okay without him for one more week, even with 2 on the block. Shaheed, well, they have Shaheed as a better receiver than George Pickens, who's a wide receiver 1, so that's interesting. And then he has Njoku, who hasn't been too impressive. I think he was hurt last week, might play this week. Not super sure. Bears D. Purdy's a guy. I liked Purdy. I thought he was a good guy to take later in the draft, and he'd give you a decent floor. He's not going to pop off for 30 most of the time, but he'll give you a good high teen 20 number that you can rely on. But so far this year, Purdy has not been that, so that's been bad for Ben. But ultimately, I'm sure he hopes Kenneth Walker comes back. I don't think he is this week, and then Barkley definitely helps provide him a higher floor. But right now, he is low on fab. He is 3rd lowest out of like non-resurrected or Gulag teams, so he is low, generally speaking, on fab. But the running backs could probably carry him for a bit here. All right, Joey. Doesn't do too much. He does trade for Zamir White for $15, which I think is an overpay. But given his situation of Christian McCaffrey on IR and Mixon being hurt, which, by the way, I heard Mixon will probably be back this week. He's trending in the right direction, so that would be good for him. He also has Eckler, who, if Mixon plays, Eckler is more of the flex. And I was wondering why they even had Mixon here, because if someone's injured and they don't expect them to play, they're not going to put them in your projected starting lineup. But this means they do project him to play, but they have him as his flex 2 behind Hunter Henry, and not even as a good flex 2. So I'm confused by that. That must mean, unless someone knows something I don't, maybe he's supposed to be on like a pitch count if he comes back. But who knows? He should be the RB1 there with Zamir White as RB2, and then Eckler in the flex. Rashee Rice has been good for him. Mark Andrews is concerning. Josh Reynolds is Here's now we can talk about Hunter Henry. Had a great week last week. I think he is going to flex him. He can hope for that upside again. He's playing tonight. And then Caleb Williams has just been bad, plain and simple. So we'll see if he can improve. But actually, I think he's starting Aaron Rodgers also tonight. So Joey's got some guys playing tonight that he'll be keeping an eye on. But 85 fab is in a good spot, but his team is a little weak. So we'll see what he can do with it. 2 ice cubes. Fleming, as I mentioned, getting the trash can, even though he got 16th, not 17th. It is what it is. Deal with it. Amon-Ra St. Brown proved to be a very important piece to his team, as he only had 2 players score in the double digits, and Josh Allen, I think, was actually like 9 point something. It just rounds up to 10. So pretty bad week overall, and especially from Allen, who you'd expect to do better. They just kind of dominated the Dolphins and ran all over them, so he didn't need to do anything. So that probably won't happen again. But Fleming really beefed up his team. After Amon-Ra last week, this week he goes and gets Brian Robinson for 36, which might be a little bit of an overpay, but he's been good so far this year, and I think I know he's a fan of him. So, good to get your guys. He trades with Ryan to get Zach Moss for 16, and he trades Justice Hill away for 6, so I think that's a good move. If you consider that Justice Hill probably wasn't startable even in the flex, he got Moss for 10 fab, which is pretty alright. Then he gets Kelsey for 15, and Kelsey has been disappointing, but I still think that could be a good investment. I wasn't willing to spend that amount on Kelsey just because I know there's a big chance. I think there's a big chance that he is just kind of a bum for this entire year, so we'll see. But he also has Kincaid, and I think he's probably starting them both this week because those are both, like, on paper, good tight ends, but they've both been disappointing, especially Kelsey this year. But yes, he is starting both of them. Mike Evans had a bad week last week, but he should bounce back. And then Jalen Warren as the second flex is a fine flex too, if you ask me. But that's about it. I mean, yeah, dead week from Allen. He's very low on fab, but he beefed up his team big time as we saw in the graphs. He's in a good spot. We'll just have to see how he works that low amount of fab as the season goes on, but he's definitely bought himself plenty of short-term security. Give me 1 second. Okay. Moving on. Last two. Cooper, as I mentioned before with Danny Dimes. I didn't realize how actually meaningful that decision was to start Daniel Jones. Actually, wait, because wasn't his other option Darnold, and I don't think he started Darnold, but now he has. Oh wait, Darnold had a good week too. Is that how it went? Did he have Darnold last week as well? So Darnold actually scored more than Daniel Jones, so he actually made the wrong decision, but it didn't matter. Okay, I was really hyping him up there, but hold on, let me double check. Yeah, he did have Darnold on his bench. Okay, so sorry. I mean, still good thinking on Daniel Jones. He did do well, relatively speaking. He was a QB6 on the week, so that's great. Jalen Naylor came through. I mean, the guy who really came through for him was on Monday night, Ray McLeod. Or was it Sunday? Sunday night. Either way, a late game. Monday night, I think it was. Yeah, Monday. Falcons, Eagles. So, but ultimately, I think he's interesting moves here. He didn't spend any in free agency. He spent it all on trades, which kind of makes sense in a way. You kind of get that guaranteed. You know who you're going to get for the money as opposed to blindly bidding. You don't know who you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to overpay. So, I mean, with 2 on the block this week, it's tough for him to not see him go bigger to get like some kind of significant pieces here. All these guys are pretty meh, but I think they all have upside. Like Ty Chandler, he's in the Minnesota Vikings. He's got like the entire Vikings offense this week. Sam Darnold, Ty Chandler, Jalen Naylor. Addison might be coming back this week, which might not be good for Naylor, but we'll see. Tyler Johnson could be good. Alec Pierce seems to be good for a touchdown every week. Justice Hill should get the yards. They're playing the Cowboys this week, and apparently through 2 weeks they are the worst team defending against running backs. So, and he's got Brenton Strange, who is dependent on the Evan Ingram injury. I don't know if he has a backup. I can check though. I can go check if he has a backup. Okay, Minnesota Vikings. Here we go. He does not have a backup. So I think he's really banking on that, but he can easily drop someone and pick someone else up if need be. And that's pretty much it. Does a lot of little trades to make his way. If he does make it past this week, 37 fab is not insignificant. You can do stuff with that. So if he miraculously makes it another week, he can for sure continue to beef up the squad and get a little better. And now Mitchell. Really just nothing went right for him. I had him as a A-tier team, or really an A-tier draft grade. I thought he drafted well. To go through some of his first couple picks, I know he had Garrett Wilson in the first, Kelsey in the second, Montgomery in the third, and at some point along the line he got Goff, maybe 4th or 5th. I liked Goff. I thought Goff was a safe pick because picking people who are safe is like what's important to me if you ask me in the draft. Not going too risky early, so I thought he got some safe guys. And Montgomery, to be fair, was safe. His only good guy was Montgomery, it seemed to be. Goff ended up disappointing. Travis Kelce, not my favorite pick out of those 4 for sure, but I still thought he was a safe guy to have a top tier, or at least an upper tier tight end compared to everyone else in the league. But he was an extreme disappointment through 2 weeks. And Garrett Wilson also has not been great. So, ultimately, nothing really went right. And now here he is in the gulag. If he does resurrect himself, he will get 44 fab back because he had 87 and will be nice and round up. But I think he's actually put together a somewhat serviceable squad here. He only needs to not get last. So if that last place is Cooper, like in theory, his enemy is Cooper. His most likely target is Cooper, to beat Cooper, and he will come back in. So I'm sure he's hoping for that. But Geno Smith is serviceable. Antonio Gibson, Khalil Herbert, I believe, Jordan Whittington, and Tutu Atwell, both Rams receivers who will see an increased workload with Kupp and Puka out. So while I don't love doubling up, I think when you're in his situation, you kind of just need a couple touchdowns from guys. And I think between these two, I think it's fair to expect one touchdown out of these two guys, you would hope. And Noah Gray, Jamal Williams, and Khalif Raymond, I mean, they can get you some points for sure. They're not nothing. And at the time of making this PowerPoint, Mitchell did not yet have a defense, but now he has the Falcons defense, and they play the Chiefs, so we'll see about that. And he also picked up Matt Collins, but I don't know if he's starting him or not. All right. That's pretty much it. Back-to-back resurrections would be pretty cool. It'd be kind of funny if he takes the resurrection basically back from Cooper. If Cooper gets last and he gets second to last, that could be kind of funny. But let's move on. Finish out this slide. Man, we're at 56 minutes. I thought I was gonna do this faster than my first go through, and I did not. All right. Power rankings. Yeah, I put myself at first. Maybe that's cocky of me, but honestly, I looked at everyone's teams and took Fab into account to some extent, and I really think I'm definitely a top 25% team, I would say, and I also have the Fab. I like where I'm at. And Jack also has a good team. Even without Barkley, he did good stuff, trading away Barkley, getting a lot of Fab, and his team is still good, so I think he's in a good spot as well. Jack Potter, similar, except his guys either traded guys away or guys who were injured like Kupp. But brought him down one just by a hair. He's still a top-tier team, I think. A lot of Fab. JC, been quiet, has a decent amount of Fab, still right around 100, but his team has been a little bit disappointing this week, or to start the season, but he's still, I think, a top-tier team. Fleming and Huff move up a bunch. Fleming made a bunch of moves, obviously, to move himself up. Low on Fab, though. Huff, without doing anything, has moved up my power rankings each week, and I think his team is better than I originally suspected, and they're looking really good. So I think he's in a good spot, especially with 100 Fab still. Mark left him where he is. I think he has a good team. He has a lot of Fab, but 7 is just where he lands. I think I wouldn't have really any problem moving around this like top 1 through 7. I think not to like draw the line right at Johnny or anything, but like I think any of these top 7 could be like the best team right now. Johnny's close to it. I mean, he's right there. I moved him up 3 spots this week to 8. His team's good. He's got a lot of rookies that are showing out, and he also has a lot of Fab, so I think he's in a good spot too. James, especially because of the J.K. Dobbins explosion, I think his team is great. At least middle of the pack, which I think is a good place to be, and he's middle of the pack in Fab, so James is like the definition of like the middle of the pack safe team right now. David is dropping down the power rankings simply because of injuries. Can't do anything about it. Pacheco to Evan Ingram, so can't do much about it. His team is in a tougher spot this week, but I don't want to drop him too far because he's like mid in Fab and can still bounce back if guys come back from injury. Phillip moves up a bunch because of his move to get Bijan. He's low on Fab, but I think his team is a lot stronger right now. He's got a pretty strong team. Probably a stronger team than David, but the Fab is kind of where I draw the line there. And I still need to see it. Like, he, just got Carson Steele, just got Bijan. Still need to see it all happen. Joey kept him exactly where he is. I think it's a good spot for him. Or like a proper spot to have him in, kind of a below average team. The CMC injury is not helping him for sure. But I'm leaving him right there at 12. Matt moves up to 13, mainly because other people drop below him. But I think with Marvin Harrison Jr. popping off, DK popping off, I think his guys can continue to be good, and he's pretty average everywhere else, so I don't think he's in a bad spot. Ben moves up a bit. Similar story kind of because other guys move down. He gets Barkley back, though. That's also another reason to move him up. He's strong at running back, and that's about it. So that should get him somewhere, at least. And now with the Jake and Ryan situation here, I made the rankings. I had a rankings prepared before they made the trade this morning, and I had Jake at 14 and Ben at 15. After the trade, I think it brought Jake down. And I thought it was going to bring Ryan up, but after evaluating their teams even after the trade, I still think Ryan's a little worse than Jake. I mean, those could be flip-flopped, and I wouldn't really care. But I have Ryan down 10 spots from 6 this week to 16. I think he's in a tough spot, but he has the fab to where if he survives, he can continue to work with it and potentially be okay. And he has guys that he's confident in this week, like Thielen, Juwan Johnson, who are his lower flex plays, but we'll see. We will see. And Cooper moving up 1 because Mitchell is now in the gulag, and Mitchell in the gulag down there at 18th. So that is it. And to end it off right at an hour pretty much, my prediction to get guillotined, and because there are 2 on the block outside of Mitchell, I will give two predictions. Although it could, if it's Cooper and Mitchell, and I'm not going to predict Cooper because that's kind of falls under the category of not a hot take to say Cooper's going to get eliminated. If Cooper and Mitchell are in the bottom, or if Mitchell's bottom 18th and Cooper's in the other bottom 2, then only one other person would go into the gulag, and those 2 would be fully eliminated. But I'm going to give 2 predictions to make it fun. Got Ryan and Jake. Not the hottest take ever, considering they are right above the 2 worst teams in the league. But I kind of want to get one right, and I think it's extremely likely one of these 2 at least is going this week. So we will see. But that is my take. I will not give my reason why, although it's kind of self-evident, and I probably gave it away in my explanation of their teams and their slides, but that's my prediction. That is it. Wraps up the week 3 preview. Good luck, everyone. Don't get guillotined.